1986 Mercedes-Benz. I think it's 104,000 miles. 560 SL. Low mileage for this year. So we have a 107 chassis model. And there's our mileage, 104,000 miles. Very clean inside. Body is clean, paint is clean. This has been kept in pristine condition. So the story, air conditioning behind this. Customer, no cooling. Now this is at, now let me go back a little bit. This is at one of my regular shops that I've been doing business with for nearly 30 years. I've been a subcontractor doing their AC. They did AC, they had machine all the way back from the R12 days. But as R12 started phasing out and 134 started coming in, at the beginning of 1990, we had our first R134 production vehicle sold in the United States. By 1994, 100% of vehicles was R134. And I've been on the ride with this shop ever since those days. They never got a 134 machine. And as usual, as cars got more difficult, it became really not worth a regular shop who does everything to do air conditioning, especially when you don't get a lot. Your one mistake can cost you the profits of 3 or 4 complete other jobs, or more if it's a very expensive mistake, especially on very expensive cars. So back to the story on this one. Car comes in, no cooling. Confirm customer report of no cooling. It does not cool. Do a visual around the vehicle looking for leaks. First thing you do your visual, talk to your customer, confirm their complaint. So on this particular one, let's see if I can point it out. What you see here, the shiny stuff, is leak detector. This is what I have. I have gallon bottles of this, and I just keep refilling this with gallon bottles. So we were all oily everywhere. So I could not really pinpoint exactly where the leak was coming off the receiver dryer. Now on the Mercedes-Benz, see if I can get a little pointer here. You have a sight glass. You could leak from inside the sight glass. You could leak at the seam, right at the seam where they screw it in through the O-ring of the sight glass. You could have a leak there. You have a pressure switch right here. You could leak at the threads of the pressure switch. This has a epoxy filling in it that seals it so the refrigerant doesn't come all the way through. That could fail. You could leak on this inner edge right here, or it could literally leak right through and come up and start coming out of around where the wires are. Or I've even seen where it stayed sealed there, but the refrigerant actually traveled inside the wiring casing, followed the wiring casing all the way up, and actually oil and everything started coming out of the wiring casing inside here, not back there. Same goes with the other switch here. You have another switch. It could fail right at the seal. It could fail right here where the plastic casing meets the metal. It could fail, there's an adjustable switch right here in the middle, and you have 2 terminals come. It could fail and leak up inside here. So if you just leak here, but you have this cover over and you don't pull it up and actually check inside, you can miss that leak. Coming around here to the other side, let's see if I can get it. Focus. Come on. Okay, I could barely focus here. You have you have the blow off, high pressure blow off. Come on, let me get. Okay, I'm having. Oh no, sorry guys. High pressure blow off is located back here, right off the back of the receiver dryer. When you hit up roughly somewhere around, say 440 psi or above, that blow off may just blow off and release your refrigerant out the backside here. And then you have another service fitting over here where you have a thread, a fitting, so you could have a leak from there. And then you have your other service fitting down here, where you could have a leak down here. Then you have the weld seal. Very rare on these, really rare, but you have a weld seal going all the way around, and it could leak from there. That's another point. So just on this device hooked up to this, those are all the possible leak points on there. So what did I do after my visual inspection looking for leaks? Oh, there was one more. Down at the compressor, this is a common one. You'll see if you look really closely at the clutch gap, there's nearly no clutch gap. It's first indication of an issue. A little bit of oil, that is known. There's a little bit of fling down on right there. You can see it flinging right there, a little oil fling there. Compressor itself is dry and clean. And then visual everything else. Now when I hooked up my gauges, well, first I analyzed refrigerant, and it was 100% pure. And then after analyzing the refrigerant, since I know I have a slow leak there, and there was only 10 psi of vapor pressure in there, I said, well, let me go ahead and do a nitrogen pressure test. And so using just the 10 psi of refrigerant that was already in there, I stuck in 160 psi of dry nitrogen in the system, and went around with my H10 leak detector. And the only leaks, I could not pick up any leaks at 160 psi. Now remember, it's 160 psi, but all the refrigerant lines and rubber and everything is cold. Being cold and being, or not cold, room temperature, ambient temperature. But remember, this might get up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So the metal expands and it could leak under that pressure. Maybe it only leaks at 180. Maybe it only leaks at 200 psi. We don't know that yet. But I wasn't going to go higher than 160 with the nitrogen, just in case the evaporator, we know it's old. Came out here, I leak test the entire system. What I did find was my leak detector, when these hoses get very old, these are original hoses, I pick up a little seepage through the hoses. And that was the one place I did pick up with the electronic leak detector. Then I went around with big glue and I hit all the components. Nothing showed up. I doused the rubber and went all the way around everything and just completely doused the rubber. You could do this with soap too. And but this, I like this, works better and it's convenient, and I buy it by the gallons. Doused everything after going over electronic leak detector, and look for bubbles at all the connections on top of the compressor, everything like that, all around there. Still didn't find anything. So release the refrigerant, and now what I'm going to do, I want to make sure, and I spun the compressor by hand, spun freely, but spinning freely doesn't mean you don't have a damaged compressor. You can have a completely eaten up compressor and still spin freely. I'm going to put trace dye in it. I want to confirm it's mechanically sound, because we are going to fill this up and let the customer take it. And they are going to come back for repairs later on, but they need AC right now. Getting parts right now is a little difficult. So we know we have a little bit of leakage from the shaft seal. We know we have, under certain conditions, we have a little bit of leakage down here. I checked under the dash, electronic leak detector, didn't find anything under the dash. So now I'll put some dye in the system, and I'll add some refrigerant to the system, and I'll run it for a little while. Now for me, doing a recovery, because my recovery machine can recover so fast, it's really not a loss of time for me to go that extra mile and put a vapor charge, or put a charge in the system, run it under full charge, test it, remove the refrigerant, go through that whole process again. Because even when I hooked up my vacuum pumps, 12 CFM, 8 CFM simultaneously, it only took me like 4 minutes to get down. On this system, it was already low on refrigerant, 10-11 psi. It only took me like 3 or 4 minutes to get down to 400 microns with this arrangement. Now, of course, when I put it at rest and I turn off the vacuum, it's going to surge, and you shouldn't be doing it through a hose anyway, because hoses are a bad way. Look at all these sources of leaks. Everywhere you have a fitting, you have a source of a leak. Moisture in hoses, a fitting, you got the fitting here, a fitting, a fitting, a fitting. Every source that you have a connection, you have a possible misdiagnosis through a leak, whether it be for vacuum or pressure. So eliminating all this is nice. For doing video displays, it's nice using gauges, because everybody understands gauges and they could read numbers. They don't want to just see a single hose off of a system and they can't see anything, you can't prove it, they don't understand it. So this is kind of a makeshift way of doing it without having a micron gauge hooked up to one port, drawing vacuum on another port to show you what's happening throughout the whole system, and showing you that I may have 1100 microns of vacuum here. If I took this hose off and just stuck a micron gauge here, like the Blue Vac, I highly recommend this thing. So you'd stick a Blue Vac micron gauge here, get rid of this stuff, draw the vacuum through here, and you would see at your gauges, say I have 280 microns, but this might show 1100 microns. So you did not pull down the system if you think you're reading something here. Another way you do that is kill your vacuum source. Leave it all open to the system. Kill your vacuum source. So let's shut off our vacuum. Now I've only had this going for about 15 minutes now. And as you can see, it's slowly climbing up. And then wait to see if it steadies and plateaus. Go away, have lunch, 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, see where it plateaus. And you might see it stop at 800, 900 microns. You might see it stop at 3200 microns, or it just might keep on going. Then you better start looking for leaks. So I could either do a little sweep with some nitrogen to help try dry it out and sweep some of the refrigerant, put it under vacuum again, but I know everything's going to get replaced shortly in here, so I'm not going to do that. But what I will do, I'm going to go under the trace dye and a little refrigerant, fill it up, prove it works good, because I don't know the condition of that condenser. Evacuum, most people say that's too much work, that's too much trouble, it takes too long. Yes, if you're using one of those big old slow machines or one of the smaller machines, one of the big automotive machines, that would be a lot of work, because your recovery unit is so damn slow. You may not like the value ratio, but I like to make sure I'm not going to have no mistakes and prove all the controls work first before I do my final. Make sure I don't have no gross leaks anywhere to grossly lose refrigerant. So it looks like we are steadying off at roughly 630 microns, and that's with roughly 15 minutes of vacuum on it. So I'm going to turn the vacuum on some more. Now remember, when you're down at these vacuum rates, really, actually, I could have a 1 CFM vacuum pump. This is 8, this is 12. This one is rated to go down to 3 microns supposedly, but you're not going to get that through rubber hoses. Once you get down, there is no flow, there is no volume. You're actually pulling out like molecule by molecule flow, not like a rushing river. So all this is really not needed after you got there. I could take all this off, and if I had a 1 CFM vacuum pump that was rated at 3 microns too, the same as this 12 CFM, at this rate, at this deep of a flow, with the lack of mass of molecules of air or moisture or refrigerant in the system, the 1 CFM would do just as good as the 12 CFM after you got down to this level. And for those of you who have not watched previous videos of mine, you notice I have a 2 vacuum pump setup. This is my really expensive vacuum pump with really expensive refrigerant oil that I don't want to contaminate. So I always use a sacrificial vacuum pump first. That's very easy to switch out refrigerant oil to do my initial vacuuming down to roughly the 500 micron level if I can, and then I turn this one on somewhere around there. Only when I know I have a clean dryer system do I hook up this, because my grandson's going to be using this vacuum pump. just like I was using my dad's, and my other brothers used my dad's that he had when he was a young man. And that vacuum pump went for 40 years. Vacuum pumps do last a long time unless they're made by a shoddy manufacturer or don't have a good upkeep kit on them. So getting back to this, you see where we're going down to. You've seen where the vacuum, where the microns settled out at, roughly 633 microns. I already injected the dye into the system, so I'm getting ready to add refrigerant. And I think that's about it. I always leave something. Actually, I always leave a lot of things out of my videos. I don't go over everything. I don't script this. I don't use tripods usually. I tried, took too long, and I don't edit. So you always might learn one thing in one video that I didn't say in another video. So I'll hit you off in the next video, probably on this car, after I put in some refrigerant and get it running. So until next time, I will see you guys later.